Number 9. The Macleans of the North. Clan Thearlaich. Sir Charles Maclean, of the family of Duart, having been appointed governor of the royal castle of Urquhart on the west side of Loch Ness, he and his posterity took up their abode in the north, and were known as the Macleans of the North, and afterwards of Garrick. During his life, Sir Charles maintained his position, and as a matter of tradition, it is stated that he built Castle Spiriton, sometimes called Spirital, at the foot of Loch Ness, of which the view, fortunately preserved in my possession by an amateur taken in the early 19th century, is given. Long a ruin, it was at first an important place from its position, and on one occasion the scene of a very violent contest between the Camerons and the Macleans. The operations connected with the formation of the Caledonian Canal brought about the formation and destruction of the entire buildings, although a part of the castle and a portion of the surrounding moat remained in recent memory. Surrounded with foes and situated at a great distance from their own chief and kin in the county of Argyll, the northern Macleans, for their own safety, took protection of and associated themselves with the Clan Chattan, then a rising and absorbing confederation. Sir Mackintosh places them as number 9 in the associated tribes, in that they took protection at about 1400. Kinrara, in his history, dealing with the period of Malcolm, 10th Mackintosh, says that Margaret, his third daughter by his wife Mara, daughter of the Laird of Moidart, married Hector Thearlaich, chief of the Clan Thearlaich, and that thereafter he gave his bond of service and man rent to Mackintosh for himself and his posterity. Hector Maclean, second of Clan Thearlaich, lived for some time at Urquhart, at the place now called Balmachan, really Balmacechen, or the seat of Hector. At a later period, he lived at the Castle Spiriton, where it is said he was killed. The position of the Macleans of the North, military settlers from a distance, was a critical one. The lordship of Urquhart had fallen into the hands of the crown, and prior to the ultimate and lasting acquisition by the Grants, was constantly plundered over and fought over by neighboring potentates from the east and the west. It is said that the Macleans had a charter to the lands of Urquhart and the barony of Bona. In the position of Hector and his son Farquhar was precarious, ultimately resulting in their being dispossessed of Urquhart and Bona. Hector was succeeded by his son, Farquhar Maclean, known as Farquhar Gorak, or the Silly, from allowing himself to be overreached by the new possessors of Urquhart. Members of his family, male and female, held high ecclesiastical positions at Iona and elsewhere, such as Agnes and Marion Maclean, prioresses of Iona, and one was Bishop of the Isles. In 1557, Donald Maclean, described as in Garrick, is one of the jurymen at Inverness in the service of Lachlan MacKinnon, as heir to his father, the deceased Ewan MacKinnon of Mackinnon. From and after 1557 to 1832, the Macleans possessed Garrick, at first on redeemable rights, but later by charter from the Gordons, the superiors, in 1623, confirmed by the crown in 1635. Alexander, eldest son of Donald, succeeded prior to 1600 and was the most important of his race. He was known as Alistair Viccoil Vicfarquhar, and so described as party to the great bond of union among the Clan Chattan, so frequently referred to in these pages, dated 4th April 1609. He was succeeded by his son, John Maclean. John married Agnes Fraser of Stroy, whose tombstone is in the Greyfriars churchyard in Inverness, wherein he is described as an honest man and worthy gentleman. He died in 1674. His eldest son, Alexander, married 28th November 1659, Agnes Chisholm of Cromer, having predeceased his father, although propelled into the property. The next Garrick was Alexander's eldest son, John Maclean, who married in 1682 Miss Margaret Fowler of Inverness, member of an important Rothshire family. He fought at Killiecrankie and exerted himself so greatly for King James as to embarrass his estate. John's third son, Donald, removed to Argyll, and his descendant, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Maclean of the 3rd West India Regiment, has been the greatest benefactor to the name of Maclean, educationally and otherwise, of all others of the name. His large bequests are now carefully and beneficially administered by the Lord Provost and Magistrates of Glasgow. John Maclean of Garrick, eldest son of John, 8th hereof, succeeded prior to 1710, and following the example of his father, took an active part for the Stuarts in 1715, and as one of the captains in the regiment of Clanhatton. He married Christina, eldest daughter of Alexander Dallas of Cantray, head of a family of long standing in the north, and was succeeded by his son, Charles Maclean, sometime an officer in the Black Watch, who was found in possession of Garrick in the year 1752. By his wife Marjorie Mackintosh of Drummond, he had 4 sons and 3 daughters, dying in 1778, being succeeded by his eldest son, John. A youth of good promise who, seeking his fortune in the West Indies at an early age, met with what was then called a stroke of the sun, necessitating his being sent home, deprived of reason. In this unhappy state, he lingered on until his death in 1826, when his second brother, Captain Phineas Maclean, having previously died in Calicut in the East Indies, the succession opened to the third son of Charles, William Maclean, a captain in the British service, whose time in Garrick had to be sold. He died in 1841, and a view of his abode is here given, which had long since disappeared. He was succeeded by his eldest son, Alan Maclean, formerly of the Naval Pay Office, Greenwich, afterwards one of the magistrates of Inverness. He had 2 brothers, the elder Charles, for nearly 40 years an officer and afterwards lieutenant colonel of the 72nd Highlanders, and the younger, who ultimately became the representative, William Maclean of Garrick, who resided mostly in England, where he died. At his death, he was succeeded by his eldest surviving son, Alan Maclean, the present Garrick, who is married and has 2 sons, 1 daughter, and the eldest son being the Reverend Alan Mackintosh Maclean, 16th in descent from Sir Charles Maclean, who first settled in the north. The Macleans of the north were long members of the Clanhatton, and I have included them, being, according to Sir Aeneas Mackintosh's history, place number 9 of the associated tribes. Up to this day, there are several Macleans, remains of ancient family, in the parishes of Urquhart and Bona. Through their dissociation to a great extent with the north for the last 60 years, the Garrick Macleans have naturally drawn back to the original clan of Duart. The present Macleans are hearty supporters and chieftains of that flourishing body, the Clan Maclean Association in Glasgow. Hope you enjoyed that, my friends. Touch not the cat but a glove.